Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peter Likes Books. I cannot believe I am filming my third video 3 days in a row over here. I'm so excited to be back on Booktube regularly. I also cannot believe that I am filming my January wrap-up. I also can't believe that I exceeded my goal for January. So, if you don't know, my goal for 2020 is to read 100 books this year. That has been my goal for the last couple of years. I haven't come anywhere close to reading 100 books in a year. Last year, I hit 40 books. Well, it's actually 41 because I discovered while I was doing the worst books of 2019, which if you haven't seen my best books of 2019 and my worst books of 2019, go check them out. Those were the last two videos I posted. But I realized that I hadn't even put into my Goodreads In Cold Blood by Truman Capote, which would have easily made one of my least favorite books of 2019. I mean, it did make the list, it just wasn't on my Goodreads. So I guess I read 41 books last year. But for the month of January 2020, are you ready? Drum roll, please. I read 9 books. I can't even believe it. My goal was to read 8 books for the month of January. Now, I will tell you, okay, that I read some shorter books. I reached out to Mel, my book club partner. If you don't know, I'm going to talk about this because 2 of the books were from the book club. But Mel and I have a book club called Peter's Book Club, but the title is going to be the title. The name of the book club is going to be changing soon. We just don't know what to call it. Every title that we come up with, like Crimeaholics and all these kinds of, they've already been taken by podcasts. It is so hard to come up with an original name for a true crime book club. So we're trying to find something, but we don't really know what to call it yet. So until then, it's just called Peter's Book Club. But anyway, Peter and Mel's Book Club, whatever. We were going to call it just The Book Club, but we want to have it like a true crime name to it. But anyway, she and I were texting earlier today, and I said, oh my god, I will have read 9 books by the end of the night, and then I just finished the 9th book. But I said, I'll have finished 9 books. And she said, oh, I'm like, she's at 7, she hopes it'll be 8. And I said, well, some of them were really short. And she goes, you cheated. That is not cheating. A book is a book, okay, is a book. So, a horse is a horse, unless, of course, the horse is named Mr. Ed. All right, so let's go in here. I'm just going to go through the books that I read for the month of January, and I'm going to kind of tell you what I rated them, and if you want to see what I rate books, and I usually go in after each book, and I'll say like one sentence, like, oh my god, I loved this book, or this was fantastic, or this book sucked, or whatever, and then I say, a full review will be posted on my Booktube channel, and then I link my Booktube channel. Before, I used to put a full review is on my Booktube channel, but then I hadn't even filmed the review. I haven't decided, and I said this yesterday, if I'm going to be doing a review after every book that I read for 2020. I'm kind of not feeling it this year of doing a review every time, so I think I'm just going to maybe go through from time to time and talk about whatever book I just read, or I'll lump them all together. So for the month of January, I'm just going to kind of lump them all together. So the first book that I read, well, I was finishing. I started it in 2019, and I finished it in 2020 after Christmas, was the Christmas book, The Noelle Diary, from the Noel collection by Richard Paul Evans. So this book was actually really good. I really liked it. I gave it 4 stars. And I don't know, let me just pull a number out of my head. I probably would give it an 87% because that was the number that just came to my head. I actually finished this book while we were in Mexico, and there was something about the book that was very homey to me. I found myself, you know, and of course this was on the heels of our dog having just passed away, so I was extremely emotional anyway, but I just found myself bawling on the beach, right? Like listening to the rest of this audiobook. And all of these books that I'm going to mention to you, I think almost, did I read any of them? Or no, they were all audiobooks. Okay. So the book is about this guy, and he is a writer, and like a famous writer, really, really famous writer, and his mother passes away, and he has kind of a tragic history with his mother, and there's a lot of mental health issues that are discussed in there. If you don't know Richard Paul Evans, I read a book of his, I think it was 2 years ago, called The Mistletoe Secret, or something like that. I also have downloaded The Mistletoe Promise, but I probably won't read it until next year at Christmas time. He writes a lot of holiday books, and he wrote The Box and things like that that was real famous. So anyway, it's about this guy, and he's a famous author, and he has to go home because his mother has left her house to him, which he's kind of surprised about. And so he goes back, and when he was growing up, she was like very organized. There was nothing out of place, and now she's a complete hoarder. And so the house is a mess, and he has to go in and he has to clean his house out. And then he like meets this person that comes to the house, and he finds this diary, and it's very speculative about his past. And so it's his past and this girl's past, and they're trying to figure out like how they align and go together. And it's kind of a mystery, but not like a mystery. It's just trying to find out like, you know, hidden clues about his past and who he is and who she is and how their lives merge together and things like that. It's fantastic. I really, really liked it. I mean, it wasn't the best writing in the entire world, and the story could have been a little bit better, and it was very short, or I probably would have given it 5 stars. Plus it was just kind of like, you know, a little like a holiday book. Which I don't know why I end up taking like some, you know, points off for it being a holiday book. But for me, unless it's just this absolutely unbelievable holiday book, like a couple years ago I read not Holly Black, she's the author, but the, what's it called? The girl that passes away. It's a young adult Christmas book. And then she ends up becoming part of like the cast of, but like a real version of the Christmas Carol. Do you know what I'm talking about? I love that. That book. What's it called? Oh shoot. Anyway, it's got kind of a long title, but it's a really good book. Then the next book that I read, and I read this like in 2 days, was The Good Nurse, a true story of medicine. Hold on, I'm pulling it up. A true story of medicine, madness, and murder by Charles Graeber. This was our December book for the True Crime Book Club, which I hadn't finished yet, so I was reading that, and I was way behind. So I read that in the beginning of January, and I gave it, hold on a second, 3 stars. What did I put underneath here? Not what I expected. I was hoping it would be a little bit more resolved. My full review will be up on my Booktube channel. Okay, wait, it's taking me out of all of this. I was not super impressed with this book. I just wasn't. I had heard really great things about this book. I was really excited about reading it. I know that there's a lot of people that read it and really, really loved it. It was about this nurse, Charles. I can't think of what his last name is, but anyway, he supposedly killed all of these people by giving them the wrong medications. It's a true story. On the East Coast of Pennsylvania, I think West Virginia. And what was interesting to me was kind of the intricacy of how he maneuvered from hospital to hospital to hospital. There was some discussion of the victims, but not tons, which I always fault a true crime book for that. And at the end, it just ended. It like just stopped. I had to go and Wikipedia what had actually happened to this guy and where he was and all this kind of stuff, because there was like, it didn't talk about the court case, it didn't talk about what happened, it didn't talk about his sentencing, it didn't really talk about anything that I can remember. And so I had to look up. I think it like talked about it briefly at the very end, like it was like dun 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 dun, like that. It was like very brief, and then it talked about what had happened to several of the people that were in the book, but it didn't talk about him and what it had. Charles Cullen, is that his name? I think it didn't talk about what had happened to him afterwards, or like, you know, if he had died, if he was alive, whatever. So I gave it 3 stars for that. It was boring, you guys. It was not an interesting true crime book for me. And then right after that, I read If You Tell. Hold on a second. This was our January true crime book, and it is called If You Tell, a true story of murder, family secrets, and the unbreakable bond of sisterhood. Okay. First of all, huge trigger warning if you're going to read this book. It has huge issues of emotional and physical abuse in there. And I think it could be questionable other kinds of abuse as well. Neglect is huge in there, and other, you know, kinds of abuse as well. It was interesting reading this book. So my best friend had just read this book before me, and Mel and I had already decided to read this book for January. And it just came out. I think it came out in like December of 2019. It was getting a lot of like attention. I don't know, I was kind of surprised by this book and my feelings. We have not done the live book, live group discussion yet. I think it's a week from Sunday. Because the Sunday is the Super Bowl, so we're gonna do it next week. So we're gonna go over and talk about it then. So come over to our live stream, and it'll be 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time a week from this Sunday. And it's on my YouNow, which is linked below. It's always funny to me when I go link below, because you guys are watching the bit, so I know. But anyway, I don't really want to say a whole lot more about that until I do the live stream, and then I may come back and talk more about it. But it was a disturbing book. It was really, really disturbing to read. And I have to say, like, after that, like, Mel and I were talking about some other books that we could read that were similar to that, and she was like, I think we need to steer away from this kind of stuff for a little while, and I agreed with her. Then the next book that I read was Conviction by Denise Mina. Okay, so this I saw on Audible. I find J. Bell, the young adult author, would I consider him young adult? No, I mean, he's more of an LGBT author, but some of the books he's written are young adult, others aren't. And when I was writing my book, he was very friendly to me, and we became friends through that whole process. He's a really nice guy. He writes this something like summer book series. He's written a lot of other series. He self-publishes. He's one of the, I think, I would say in the top 10 of self-publishing authors that does really, really well doing that. He's kind of like found his niche within that. But I noticed the other day that he tweeted out something and he said, like, do you guys find most of your, let me know how you find most of your books. And I find most of my books through Audible and through Goodreads. Like, just reading your threads on Goodreads, I find so many books I've never heard of before. And so it was interesting because I found this book. This was one of Reese Witherspoon's Audible picks of the month, or she has a book club or something now. I don't know. So I didn't know anything about it, but when I read what it was about, I was like, okay, I really want to read this. So let me tell you let me read you the caption of what it says. A true crime podcast sets a housewife's present life on a collision course with her secret past. The day Anna McDonald's quiet, respectable life explodes starts off like all the days before, packing up the kids for school, making breakfast, listening to yet another true crime podcast. Then her husband comes downstairs with an announcement, and Anna is suddenly, shockingly, alone. Reeling and desperate for distraction, Anna returns to the podcast. Other people's problems are much better than one's own. A sunken yacht, a murdered family, a hint of international conspiracy. But this case actually is Anna's problem. She knows one of the victims from an earlier life, a life she's taken great pains to leave behind, and she is convinced that she knows what really happened. Then, an unexpected visitor arrives on her front stoop. A meddling neighbor intervenes, and life as Anna knows it is well and truly over. The devils of her past are awakened and in hot pursuit. Convinced she has no other option, she goes on the run and in pursuit of the truth, with a washed-up musician at her side and the podcast as her guide. You guys, this book was fantastic. I mean, I gave it 5 stars, 100%. It was so good. Did it have like any great meaning to it? No. But there were a lot of lessons in this book, and I don't really want to talk about it without ruining it for people. There are a lot of lessons about forgiveness and moving on and interactions with people and things like that, and relationships gone awry. It was fantastic. I will tell you, trigger warning, there's a lot of discussion about anorexia in the book, because one of the main characters has anorexia. So I do want to say that if you're going to read the book. But the book was really well done. Like, I could not wait to get in my car and listen to this book. It was fantastic. I was obsessed with it. I have told everybody to go read this book. I'm telling you, you will not be disappointed. If you like thrillers and you like kind of like mysteries of what's going on, it's kind of a new one too, because it's all done to this podcast. So they're like listening to this podcast at the same time that they're like trying to solve the case of the podcast. So, but she has a personal connection to the story in the it's so good, you guys. It's so good. So, Conviction by Denise Mina. Okay. Then the next book that I read was for my Peterisms channel. So for my Peterisms channel, where I do like motivation, inspiration read meditations on motivation, inspiration, motivational, you know, inspirational meditations I read on a daily basis. I tell stories of my life, things I've learned from. I decided in November that I wanted to read a book a month that was like inspirational or motivational, kind of like a self-help book, but I really don't like that word. So in November, I picked The 4 Agreements. For December, which I loved The 4 Agreements. For December, I picked The Celestine Prophecy because I had read it like right out of the gate when I left treatment 25 years ago, and it like profoundly changed my life, and I couldn't really remember why. And then I also picked The Secret because I had read The Secret at one point, and it really affected me positively and profoundly affected me. So I wanted to reread that as well. I didn't finish those in December, so I read them in January. The Celestine Prophecy was the first one that I read. And I'm gonna do a whole review of these over on my Peterisms channel, so you can go over there, and those will be up probably sometime in the next week. it was interesting reading about the Celestine Prophecy by James Redfield. Okay, I had to change the battery because the battery stopped. So anyway, the book is about this guy, and he is in search of these 9 insights, okay? And it's an adventure story, and he's on the run in Peru, and he goes and meets all these people, and it seems like the only thing that is kind of really hard to believe, it's like every person he meets along the way has something to do with these insights, right? Which, at the beginning of the book, they talk about coincidences, and there are no such thing as coincidences, and you meet people, and blah, 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 whatever. Anyway, each of the insights is basically a lesson to further your life, and the first insight is really about when you're kind of lost in life and you're feeling restless and you don't know what your direction should be. And, you know, in reading that, it reminded me so much of where I was at that point that I had first gotten sober, and that would totally have defined me where I was. Like, I did feel restless. I had no clue where I was going in my life. I didn't know what my next step should be other than staying sober. And so it was great to reread it. I would say I'm not necessarily at that point in my life today. I mean, I feel like I have a life beyond my wildest dreams. So I don't necessarily feel that way. But as far as like me always constantly wondering, you know, what is my next big dream? What's my next big goal? This book was really powerful to reread it for that. So I would recommend it to anybody that is like, I don't really know what I want to do with my life. Like, I don't really know what I should be doing next. And it's really talking about creative renaissance. It's talking about this idea of, you know, love as an energy source and uplifting ourselves and connecting with others and finding signs and signals to each other. I mean, you kind of have to leave, I mean, for me, I'm somebody that believes in a lot of different things, and I kind of just like take what I like and I leave the rest, which is something that I learned in early recovery. So if you're going to read this book and it's going to have any kind of effect on you, you kind of have to leave any preconceptions at the door, because it is very new agey. I mean, it definitely is, you know, and the concepts in there are that way as well. But, I mean, even just to read it as far as, like, how we affect one another and how our lives affect and intertwine with other people and what we learn from other people, I think it's a really great, it's a magical book. It really is. And then I read The Secret by Rhonda Byrne after that, and The Secret didn't have the same kind of effect on me this time that it did the last time. And I think that's because, I mean, I very much already believed in the law of attraction and all that, you know, but I don't know that I necessarily believe it in this, like, literal kind of way. But I have to tell you what's interesting about this. So, was it 2 nights ago? I think it was I think it was last night that I finished this book. Was it last night or the night before? Or was it I don't know. But anyway, I did like this face mask and was like in the bathroom, had a candle lit, and I was like listening to The Secret and whatever, and I was just really taking it all in. And there was a part in the book where she's talking about this 10-year-old kid that really wants to see if it works, right? So he sets this goal, and he's like, if The Secret works, it will achieve this thing, right? So I'm hearing that, and I'm very much somebody that tests things like that. So I'm in my head, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna this, right? And what is so weird, you guys, is I was just kind of like practicing, you know, the law of attraction over that and bringing it to me and visualizing it, whatever. They were very small things that I asked for, okay? But what was interesting was all 3 things happened within 24 hours. I mean, it was weird, you guys. Like the second one, I was like, oh my God, like this is crazy, right? So I think I need to practice the idea of attracting to me what I think I deserve, you know, and attracting to me what I want in this life, you know, and I don't know, it's weird. You know, I think the first time that I read it, it was like, you know, riches and this car. I can remember at the time I wanted a Porsche Carrera, which I could, or a Porsche Cayenne, which I could care less about now, you know. I mean, don't get me wrong, if somebody wanted to gift me one, I would definitely drive one. But at that time, it was like really like that's what I cared about, you know. I've changed a lot since those days. And, you know, I would like visualize myself. And what was weird was I started seeing them everywhere. Like I didn't see them. I mean, in Indiana at that time, it wasn't like every time you turned left, you saw a Porsche, you know, Cayenne. But I started seeing them all over the place. But what I really believe that the lesson is you take from it is that it's not so much about driving a Porsche Cayenne. It's about visualizing yourself being successful enough that you could do that if you wanted. And what does it take to get there, and doing the work and waking up on a daily basis to like put the work into getting to a point that if you wanted to drive that kind of car, you could. And so it's really about visualizing yourself being happy and successful. And today, the things I visualize for myself are peace, serenity, happiness. This is like a Peterisms video. See, this is why I wanted to wait till over there. But it's really about visualizing peace and serenity, happiness, a loving marriage, you know, being with friends and family, things like that, you know, having a happy, you know, home environment, all of that. It's not the things I wished for back then. And I think that's why today it like didn't resonate with me as strongly as it did the first time, because I have those things in my life today and I'm grateful for them. So I think more practicing gratitude, which the book discusses as well, practicing gratitude. And I know that Rhonda Byrne actually did a book called Magic, and I want to actually do it again, because I did it one time, and it's 30 days of practicing gratitude. It's like a workbook, and the first time that I did it, I remember my husband said to me, "This is the happiest I've ever seen you." And I do think that, you know, practicing gratitude as an action really brings those things to us, and it talks a lot about that in The Secret. So maybe I will do that book as one of my Peterisms books this month. Okay, we've gone way. So then I read The House with a Clock in Its Walls by John Bellairs, because I wanted to pick a short book because I was trying to get 8 books done for the month. And I thought I had read this book when I was a kid. I have the book down in the basement. I think I have like 2 copies of it. I have blue covers of it that are like this big, and then I have one that has the first one and then the second one back to, like, you turn it over and the other side is like, you know what I mean, like you turn it around and the other side. I have that one right over there. I don't know that I did ever read this all the way through when I was a kid, because I don't remember like the last half of the book, but I do remember some of the beginning of it. So I must have started it when I was a kid or something, but I loved this book. Now I gave it 4 stars because it's, you know, an elementary school, middle-aged book, and it wasn't the greatest book I've ever read in my entire life. Do I think it holds its own to Harry Potter? To some degree, yeah, I really do. Like, if you like that, you're gonna love these books. They're a lot shorter, and it's about this kid named Lewis, and his parents die in an automobile accident, and he goes to live with his uncle, Jonathan, who is, I haven't seen the movie with Jack Black yet, but I do want to see it. He goes and lives with his uncle in this town called New Zebedee, and I think it's in Michigan, and his uncle lives in this big old mansion, and he's like a parlor magician, and so then he has this neighbor named Mrs. Zimmerman, and she comes over and hangs out like every day. They're like best friends, and she's a witch too. She's a witch, and he's like a warlock or a wizard. And so it's really just very sweet and good. But it's like a good mystery too. So I finished that, and then I turned right around. Oh no! In between there, I listened to The Evidence of the Affair by Taylor Jenkins Reid, because I already have this book on Audible, and this was my 8th book for the month of January. So Taylor Jenkins Reid was the author of my favorite book for 2019, and that is, what was that book called? The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which I absolutely loved. So The Evidence of the Affair is like a novella. It was very short. On Audible, it was like an hour and a half, hour and 15 minutes long. And it was about this woman, and she writes this, okay, so she's found these letters of, I'm not going to spoil it for everybody, I'm just going to tell you the beginning of it. But she finds these letters that her husband has received from this woman that he is allegedly having an affair with. So she finds the husband of the woman, and she writes him telling him that the affair is going on. And then this correspondence begins back and forth, but it's also about the correspondence between the two having the affair. And it's just what happens over, you know, I don't know. I saw it coming from day one. Like, I mean, right out of the gate, I was like, this is what's going to happen. Everybody told me they didn't like this, and I have to say I didn't love it either. What did I give it? I gave it 2 stars. It was just bad. I mean, it was really bad. It was like some really trite Hallmark movie, you know? And I thought, what's interesting to me about this is, I don't know when she wrote this. I don't know if this was like a college creative writing thing that then got into some anthology or whatever. It was an okay idea, but it's like, I feel like I've seen something like this like a million times before, even though I can't name one thing that but it felt familiar to me, you know? And the end of it, I just wasn't surprised by it at all. I was like, I wasn't invested in the characters either, whatsoever. And I do like novellas, you know. What was it? Annie Proulx, who wrote Shipping News. My mom had bought me Brokeback Mountain, because that was one of my mom's favorite movies of life. And so I read that for a Booktube-a-thon a couple years ago, and I was just floored. It was beautifully written, right? And so much different than the movie, if you've seen the movie. So I do like novellas. There's been a couple novellas I've read that I really liked, but this wasn't it for me. And then the last book that I read, I just finished it today, was The Figure in the Shadows by John Bellairs. And I gave it 4 stars as well. And this is the second installment in the Louis Barnevelt, is that Barnevelt? Is that his name? Louis Barnevelt books by John Bellairs. And this is the follow-up to The House with the Clock in Its Walls. Now, I have to tell you, I only thought that there was like 4 books in the series, but there's like 12 books in the series. And like 8 of them or 9 of them are on Audible, so I'm gonna be listening. But they're like full price. They're like $10 for these books, which whatever, but I'm like, okay, so you can pay like $10 for a 30-hour book, or you can pay like $10 for like a 3-hour book. Like, that doesn't make any sense, right? But anyway, so I think I got House with the Clock in Its Walls on sale when Audible was having a sale recently. But I'm really into that series. I really, really like it. And the second one is now like the introduction of Louis's best friend, who is this Rosie girl. And she reminds me of kind of like Peppermint Patty, like from the Peanuts. But anyway, and then it's about this, he's being bullied, and it's about this magic coin that is from Jonathan's grandfather. I don't want to ruin it for anybody in case you're gonna read it, but it's sweet. It's another one of these sweet kind of stories. But I haven't started another book yet, and I have to tell you, I think my next book is going to either be, we're reading Mindhunter by John Douglas. That's our February true crime book. So I'm either going to start that, or I am going to start Truly Devious. Oh, what's the other book about? Then there's the book about the DC shooter that I bought. I think it's called I Am God. It's an Audible exclusive original over there. And I think I might start that. It's either that or the Truly Devious third part of the series. I'm really excited. I got it on Audible. People mentioned it, and so whoever said they had just read it, it literally came out on the 21st. I talked about it in my vlog last night, and then I bought it. Or I bought it before I vlogged last night, and I'm really excited about it. So anyway, those are all the books that I read for January. I read 9 books. Can you believe it? I'm so on task for hitting 100 books this year, and I'm really excited about all of the books I'm going to read and whatever. I'm going to try in February not to read as many like 2 and 3 hour books, but I will tell you that the Peterisms book for February is called Make Your Bed, and I can't remember who it's by, but it's by this guy that was in the military for a long time, and it was like lessons that he learned or taught while he was in the military. So that's the book for the Peterisms channel if you want to read a inspirational, motivational book for the month of February. So anyway, let me know if you've read any of those books. Let me know what you thought about it. What books did you read? What books did you read in January? I love you guys, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.